Chronicles of the Galactic Collision. Chapter 1. The collision. The darkness of space was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a bright light that pierced the inky blackness. It was followed by a deafening roar that echoed through the empty void. The sound of metal meeting metal reverberated in the silence, a clanging, metallic symphony that filled the void as two massive ships collided with each other. On board the smaller ship, Captain Kira Johnson tensed as her vessel shook violently. Smoke filled the cockpit as the ship's systems screamed their failures. Johnson struggled to stabilize the controls, but the vessel was too damaged, too far gone. She knew what was coming next. She tried to grab the comms device, but it was too late. The ship exploded into 1,000 glittering fragments, and Johnson was thrown out into space. Alarms blared on board the larger ship, the Leviathan, as they felt the impact. They had been on a routine mission to explore a distant, uncharted planet when the smaller ship had collided with them out of nowhere. What was supposed to be an easy reconnaissance mission had turned into a chaotic battle for survival. Engineers scrambled across the ship's vast chambers, checking systems and assessing damage. The crew braced themselves for the worst. The captain, a seasoned veteran named Andrei Kosciuszko, stood on the bridge barking orders as the Leviathan's deflector shields took the brunt of the hit. The ship shuddered and groaned as the collision sent shockwaves through the hull. Kosciuszko's heart raced as he assessed the situation. The Leviathan was heavily damaged, but they were still intact. For now. Report, he barked, looking around at his crew. The engines are down, said one of the engineers, sweat pouring down his face. But life support is still functioning. We can keep the ship stable for now. Good, said Kosciuszko. Get those engines back online. We need to get moving. As the crew scrambled to obey their captain's orders, they suddenly registered a strange energy reading. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen, a pulsing, almost breathing presence that seemed to be emanating from the wreckage of the smaller ship they had collided with. Captain, we're picking up an energy signature, said the science officer, staring at their monitors in alarm. What kind of energy? Asked Kosciuszko. I don't know, said the officer. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before. Kosciuszko knew that his mission had just taken a sharp turn. Whatever was out there, they had to investigate it. The fate of his crew, and perhaps the entire galaxy, depended on it. Bring us in closer, he said. Let's see what this energy is all about. Chapter 2. The gathering. The Leviathan edged closer to the wreckage of the smaller ship as the mysterious energy signature grew stronger. Kosciuszko watched through the port window, his eyes focused on the debris field. He had no idea what had caused the collision, but the energy they were picking up had to be related. As the Leviathan approached the wreckage, they saw something that left them stunned. Floating in the debris field were strange, shimmering crystal formations unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. They seemed to pulse with an inner light, a faint hum emanating from their smooth surfaces. Everyone on the bridge held their breath as they watched the crystals, mesmerized by their strange beauty. But then their attention was drawn to something else. There was movement among the wreckage, figures moving among the debris. Kosciuszko pressed a button on his chair, and the bridge computer zoomed in to the debris field. He could see figures emerging from the wreckage, humanoid beings, but unlike any he'd ever seen before. They were tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like the crystals they were surrounded by. They moved with a grace and fluidity that was almost unsettling. Captain, said the science officer, his voice trembling. I'm picking up some kind of telepathic signal. It's almost like they're communicating with us. Kosciuszko's heart raced as he considered their next move. These beings could be friendly, but they could also be dangerous. He had to approach with caution. Open a channel, he said, his voice stern. Let's see what they want. The comm officer nodded and patched the signal through. There was a burst of static, and then a voice spoke. Greetings, it said, in perfect English. We are the Soterians. We mean you no harm. Kosciuszko was taken aback. These beings spoke English? Who are you? He asked. We are the Soterians, repeated the voice. We are a peaceful race of beings, travelers of the universe. We detected the energy signature of your ship, and we came to investigate. Kosciuszko hesitated. He had no idea if he could trust these beings, but he knew he had to keep his options open. He decided to send a team over to the wreckage to investigate. Very well, he said. We are sending a team over to investigate. We will approach with caution. Do not try anything hostile. The Soterians gave their assent, and the comm officer signaled to the engineering team. They were going in. As the team approached the wreckage, they could see the Soterians watching them. They moved with the same eerie grace as before, their skin shimmering in the light. But there was something else about them, something unsettling. Their eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. It was almost as if they could see into the souls of those around them. The engineers reached the debris field and began to search. They found traces of advanced technology, strange devices that hummed with power, crystal formations that seemed to pulsate with energy. But there was something else as well, something that left them terrified. They found bodies. The wreckage was littered with the corpses of strange, humanoid beings. Their skin was charred and blackened, their eyes staring blankly into space. It was clear that there had been some kind of violent event here, and the Soterians seemed to be at the center of it. Kosciuszko watched in horror as the engineers transmitted back their findings. He knew that his mission had just taken a dark turn. He had to find out what had happened here, and he had to stop the Soterians before they could do any more damage. But as he watched the shimmering beings in the debris field, he knew that the road ahead would be a dangerous one. Chapter 3. The escape. Kosciuszko realized that his team was in grave danger. They were trapped out there, surrounded by the debris of the destroyed ship and the mysterious, shimmering beings that had caused it. He had to get them out of there, and fast. He ordered the Leviathan to launch a handful of escape pods towards the wreckage. The engineers on board hurriedly fired up the pods and launched themselves towards the debris field, hoping to reach their stranded comrades in time. The escape pods reached the debris field and docked with the wreckage, just as the Soterians began to exhibit strange behavior. Their skin began to pulse with a bright light, and their eyes seemed to focus on something far away. Suddenly, they began to emit a powerful energy burst that shook the nearby ships, including the Leviathan. Kosciuszko knew immediately that something was very wrong. He called for an emergency jump, but the ship's engines were still offline from the earlier collision. They were trapped. The Soterians continued their assault, the energy waves becoming more powerful with each passing moment. The Leviathan shook and shuddered as the shields began to fail. The crew braced themselves for the end. But just as it seemed like all was lost, something miraculous happened. The shimmering crystals that surrounded the Soterians began to resonate with the energy waves, absorbing them into their structure. As the energy was siphoned away, the Soterians collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Kosciuszko saw an opportunity. He ordered his team to retrieve the engineers and escape pods before the Soterians could recover. He knew they couldn't afford to be caught there again. The team scrambled to obey, grabbing their colleagues and their equipment, then racing back to the escape pods. But as they made their way across the debris field, they were suddenly attacked by a group of Soterians who had been lying in wait. The crew was caught off guard, and they fought with everything they had as the alien beings closed in. It was a brutal fight, with the crew using whatever they could find as weapons against the agile, shimmering beings. They managed to take down some of them, but more kept coming, their eyes glowing with a fierce intensity. Kosciuszko watched the chaos from the bridge of the Leviathan. He knew he had to do something to help his team. He ordered the ship's cannons to fire on the Soterians, hoping to scatter them and buy his crew some time. The cannons roared to life, and their destructive power cut through the debris field like a knife. The Soterians were caught in the crossfire, and many of them fell to the ground, their bodies shattered by the impact. Kosciuszko held his breath as he watched, hoping that his crew had a chance to escape. But suddenly, one of the escape pods was hit by a stray bullet and exploded in a fiery burst. Kosciuszko knew that they had to act fast. "Get us out of here," he said. "Emergency jump. Now." The engineers scrambled to comply, their fingers dancing across the controls. Suddenly there was a burst of light, and the Leviathan disappeared into the void of space, leaving the Soterians and the wreckage far behind. Kosciuszko let out a deep breath, relieved that his team had made it out alive. But even as he sat there, his mind racing with what had just happened, he couldn't help but wonder what else lay in store for them in the deep, black reaches of space. Chapter 4. The discovery. After narrowly escaping the wreckage and the Soterians, the Leviathan was damaged and badly in need of repairs. Kosciuszko ordered his crew to prioritize fixing the ship's engines and deflector shields so that they could continue their mission. As repairs were underway, the science officer discovered something strange. Deep scans of the debris field showed that there was a planet close by, one that had not been detected by any of their previous scans. This was strange in and of itself, but what made it even more interesting was the fact that the planet seemed to be emanating the same energy signature as the wreckage they had just escaped from. Kosciuszko ordered the Leviathan to move towards the planet, eager to uncover its secrets. As they entered orbit, they saw something that left them stunned. The planet was completely artificial. It was a vast, metallic structure, its surface marked by intricate patterns and unfamiliar symbols. The Leviathan skimmed over its surface, scanning its structure with advanced sensors. Kosciuszko knew that they had stumbled upon something remarkable, something that could redefine the very nature of their understanding of the universe. As the ship flew closer to the surface of the planet, they could see that it was covered in massive structures, towers and domes that reached into the sky. And hovering above it all was a massive structure that looked like nothing they'd ever seen before. It was like a gigantic, pulsing crystal, shimmering with unknown energy. The crew was silent as they looked upon the planet, amazed by what they were seeing. But then, their attention was drawn to something else. There was a massive, dark object approaching the planet, moving with speed and purpose. It seemed to be heading straight for them. Kosciuszko ordered the crew into battle stations, ready to face whatever was coming their way. But just as they were about to engage the enemy, they saw something astonishing. The dark object was evaporating right before their eyes, dissolving into a cloud of shimmering particles. The particles began to coalesce, forming into something that left the crew completely awestruck. It was an alien being, towering over the Leviathan, its body pulsing with a bright light. It looked almost like the Soterians they had encountered earlier, but it was something else entirely. The being spoke, its voice echoing across the void of space. "Greetings," it said. "We are the Celestials. We created this planet, filled with the wonders of the universe. We have been waiting for your arrival." Kosciuszko's heart raced as he considered what he was being told. These beings had created this entire planet? But why? And what did they want with the Leviathan? "We come in peace," he said, his voice steady. "But we want to know why you have brought us here." The Celestial's eyes glowed with a fierce intensity. "We have brought you here," it said, "because we need your help. Our planet has been infested by a race of beings that seek to destroy everything we have created. But with your help, we can stop them. Will you aid us?" Kosciuszko knew that this could be the moment that defined their mission. They had the chance to help a seemingly benevolent race of beings and explore a planet unlike any other. But he also knew that there were risks involved. Still, he made the decision. "We will help you," he said, his voice firm. "But we need to know more about this threat. And we need to be sure that we can trust you." The Celestial gave its assent, and the Leviathan descended towards the surface of the planet, ready to begin their mission. As they touched down on the surface, Kosciuszko could feel the weight of the mission on his shoulders. But he knew that he had the best crew in the galaxy, and that together, they would face whatever lay ahead. Chapter 5. The plan. Kosciuszko and his team had descended to the surface of the artificial planet, ready to confront the threat that had been waiting for them. They were armed and ready for battle, unsure of what they would be facing. As they disembarked from the Leviathan, they were greeted by the Celestials, strange beings that shimmered with an inner light. They led the crew to a vast, metallic structure, one that seemed to stretch out into the sky. It was the heart of the celestial city, their home. Inside, they were brought into a strange chamber that was filled with pulsating crystals and mystical symbols. The Celestials gathered around them, their eyes glowing with an inner light as they spoke. "We have detected the presence of an enemy force," said one of the Celestials. "They are a race of beings that we have been fighting for many years. They seek to destroy everything we have created, to wipe us clean from the universe." Kosciuszko listened carefully, his mind racing with possibilities. He knew that they needed a plan, and they needed it fast. "What can you tell us about these beings?" he asked. "How do they fight, and what kind of weapons do they have?" The Celestial responded, its voice ringing out across the room. "They are a formidable enemy," it said. "Their weapons are powerful, and they have ships that can move across the galaxy with incredible speed. We have fought many battles against them, but they always seem to come back stronger." Kosciuszko knew that they were up against something frightening. But he also knew that they had to act fast. "We need to come up with a plan," he said. "Something that will give us the advantage we need to defeat them." The Celestials nodded their agreement, and they began to work together, pooling their knowledge and resources to come up with a plan. They spent hours discussing tactics, studying maps and schematics, and analyzing every piece of information they had on the enemy forces. Finally, they emerged from the chamber, their faces determined. They had a plan, and they knew that it had a chance of succeeding. "The enemy forces are divided into multiple fleets," said one of the Celestials. "If we can isolate them, we can pick them off one by one. We have prepared a series of attacks that will target their weakest points, taking out their ships and their weapon systems." Kosciuszko listened intently, his mind racing with the possibilities. He knew that this was their best chance of defeating the enemy forces, and he knew that they had to put their plan into action as soon as possible. "We'll need all of our ships on this," he said. "We need to coordinate every attack, to make sure that we're hitting them where it hurts. We can do this, but we need to be focused and committed." The crew nodded their agreement, and they set to work, gathering all of their resources and preparing for war. They knew that it wouldn't be an easy fight, but they were determined to emerge victorious. As the crew raced across the planet's surface, preparing for their mission, Kosciuszko could feel his heart racing. He knew that this was their moment, the moment that would define their mission and their legacy. But he also knew that they had each other, their skills, and their courage, and that together, they could overcome any obstacle. Chapter 6. The final battle. Kosciuszko and his team had prepared for the final battle against the enemy forces that threatened the celestial planet. They had devised a plan, coordinated their attacks, and were ready to face their toughest challenge yet. The Leviathan and her crew led the charge, taking point in the assault against the enemy fleet. They moved fast, their weapons blazing, taking out ships and weapon systems with deadly precision. The Celestials fought beside them, their energy weapons sizzling through the air, taking down enemy ships and protecting their own. It was a fierce battle, with ships exploding left and right, the roar of cannons filling the void of space. But the enemy was not to be underestimated. They fought back with all of their might, their weapons tearing through the Leviathan's shields and sending shudders through the ship's hull. The crew was determined, but they knew that they had to be careful. One mistake could be their last. As the battle raged on, Kosciuszko could feel his lungs burning and his heart racing. He knew that they were close, that victory was within their grasp, but they had to keep pushing, keep fighting until the very end. And then, something remarkable happened. The Celestials began to glow with an inner light, and the shimmering crystals that dotted the planet's surface began to pulse with energy, sending out waves of light that seemed to wash over the battlefield. The enemy forces recoiled, and the Leviathan surged forward, taking out ships one by one. Kosciuszko realized that they had an ally in the Celestials, that their power was greater than anything he had ever imagined. He felt a rush of adrenaline, and he surged forward with the crew, determined to end this once and for all. The final assault was like nothing they'd ever seen before. Explosions rocked the battlefield, ships fell in fiery bursts, and the enemy was slowly but surely brought to their knees. The Leviathan swooped in, its cannons firing relentlessly, until finally, the enemy forces were defeated. The crew let out a cheer, their fists raised high in the air. The Celestials congratulated them, their eyes glowing with pride and gratitude. And Kosciuszko knew that they had done something remarkable, something that would go down in the history books as one of the greatest victories ever achieved by mankind. As they lifted off from the surface of the planet, Kosciuszko stopped to look out the window, taking in the shimmering crystals and the vast metallic structures that stretched out towards the sky. He knew that they had uncovered something beyond their wildest dreams, and that there were so many more wonders out there waiting for them. But for now, all that mattered was that they had accomplished their mission, that they had faced their fears and emerged victorious. And that, Kosciuszko knew, was worth everything. Chapter 7. The twist: the crew of the Leviathan had accomplished their mission, defeating the enemy forces that threatened the celestial planet. They had discovered wonders beyond their imagination, battled foes beyond their wildest dreams, and emerged victorious against all odds. As they prepared to return to Earth, they basked in the glow of their success, their hearts filled with a sense of accomplishment and awe. But little did they know that there was one more twist waiting for them, one that would shake them to their very core. As they lifted off from the surface of the celestial planet, something strange began to happen. The ship's systems started to flicker, its engines sputtering and coughing. The crew tried to bring it under control, but the ship was slipping away, its systems failing one by one. And then, their worst fear was realized. The Leviathan was falling, hurtling towards the surface of the planet below. Kosciuszko knew that they had to act fast. He barked out orders, his crew responding with speed and precision. They tried to get the engines back online, to stabilize the ship's descent, but it was too late. The Leviathan crashed, slamming into the ground with a deafening roar. The crew was thrown clear, tumbling across the ground until they came to a stop. They were battered, bruised, and wounded, but they were alive. As they picked themselves up, they surveyed the damage. The Leviathan was in shambles, twisted and broken, her systems shattered beyond repair. And then, something incredible happened. The Celestials appeared before them, shimmering with an inner light, their eyes filled with concern. "We are sorry for what has happened," said the Celestial. "We did not intend for this to occur." Kosciuszko listened carefully, his heart racing with a mix of fear and confusion. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Why did the ship fail?" The Celestial hesitated, its eyes flickering uncertainly. "There is something you must know," it said. "The planet you are on is not a planet at all. It is a massive machine, one that was designed to test the limits of sentient life. And you, Kosciuszko, and your crew have passed that test with flying colors." Kosciuszko listened in shock, his mind racing with the implications. "What are you saying?" he asked. "That this was all a test, that we were never really in danger?" The Celestial nodded its agreement, its eyes filled with a mixture of compassion and regret. "Yes," it said. "You were never in danger. We designed this machine to test the courage, intelligence, and resourcefulness of sentient life. You have shown us that humanity has what it takes to face the unknown, to stand up to danger, and to emerge victorious." Kosciuszko felt a mix of emotions, relief that they were safe, anger that they had been deceived, and pride at the fact that they had passed the test. "But why did you do this?" he asked. "What was the point of all this, of putting us through this?" The Celestial looked at him, its eyes filled with a sense of sadness. We have watched your kind for millennia, it said. We have seen you rise, fall, and rise again. And we have come to the conclusion that humanity has something special, something that sets it apart from all other life forms in the universe. We wanted to prove that to ourselves, to see if you were truly worthy of what lies beyond your planet. Kosciuszko listened in awe, realizing that they had uncovered something far more remarkable than he could have ever imagined. As they prepared to leave, the Celestials bade them farewell, their eyes filled with a sense of compassion and respect. We will be watching you, Kosciuszko, it said. We will be watching to see what you do with the knowledge you have gained, to see if you will continue to rise to the challenge and push the boundaries of what is possible. The crew of the Leviathan left the celestial planet behind, their hearts filled with a mix of wonder, gratitude, and a newfound sense of purpose. They had passed the test, and they knew that they were ready for whatever lay ahead. And Kosciuszko knew that this was only the beginning of their journey, that there were still wonders to uncover, mysteries to solve, and challenges to face. But with his crew by his side, he knew that they would be ready for anything.